Good evening, Greenville Middle School, future Greenville Middle School fifth grade families. Those of you that are out there from Greenville Elementary School and North Greenville Elementary School that have fourth grade students that are transitioning to fifth grade, welcome to our presentation this evening. We are very excited to meet with you tonight to talk to you about the transition from fourth grade to fifth grade and what that entails for your child and all the exciting opportunities that await. The first question I'd like to ask is, how much does a polar bear weigh? And so turn and talk with your family member quick there if you are with someone and ask them how much a polar bear weighs. All right, and so the answer to that is very simple. It weighs just enough to break the ice. And that's a little boom joke, right? So we appreciate all of you coming here. I'm Mr. Lawrence. It's nice to meet all of you. I will be introducing Mrs. Powell very shortly. As I said before, we are excited to introduce you to the fourth to fifth grade transition meeting this evening. All right. So coming to middle school is a really important time for students. And I love this quote that I found that's tied to what it means to be a middle schooler and how it's analogous with a jigsaw puzzle. And so middle school is like a jigsaw puzzle. Each edge piece of the puzzle interlocks with others to form the puzzle's framework and structure and support to the puzzle as a whole. Each piece has a unique design and cut that ensures just the right place to fit within the puzzle. Teachers and you as parents form the edge pieces that interlock to create a safe environment and give support to one another and the whole. They provide just the right place for every student to fit safely and securely. And that's really important for us because it is a partnership that we have with you as we help your child navigate through this process of becoming a middle schooler and then ultimately going to high school and beyond. So we're very excited about this opportunity. A little bit about the agenda tonight so you know what's coming. I'm going to bring you over to Mrs. Powell in a minute. She's going to introduce you to some of our staff members here that will be fifth grade teachers next year, as well as our exploratory teachers. We'll talk about next year logistics. We'll talk about procedural wonderings, which means, how does a student navigate fifth grade and what does that mean? And what can you as parents do to help support that process? Academic wonderings that fifth graders might have when they come to the middle school, and then ways that you can help support that process as well. Social emotional learning, we certainly know is a big ticket item, especially after the challenges that we've had this year in navigating a pandemic and the opportunities that we've provided students educationally. We want to really make sure that we're here to support our students' social emotional learning as they enter middle school. And so what can we do here at school and what can you as parents do to help to support that process? And then parent involvement in the school. As you know, this year we weren't able to have as much parental involvement due to the COVID and not being able to bring people into the building. But we really want to see if we can open that up next year and really provide opportunities for you to get involved with your students in their education here at middle school. And then the middle school transition program, which will be taking place August 16th to the 19th for your child. And then we'll have a question and answer session also. And honestly, we have an opportunity. If you want to type questions into the chat, we certainly welcome you to do that. We will get to some of those questions as we proceed through the meeting this evening, and we'll go from there. Next, I want to introduce you to a very, very good friend of mine, Mrs. Powell, who's our associate principal here at Greenville Middle School. So, Mrs. Powell.
All right, thank you, Mr. Lawrence. My name is Jess Powell, and I'm the associate principal here at the middle school. I am just completing my first year with this fabulous team, and I have loved every single minute of my time here at Greenville Middle School. Prior to this, I was at Hortonville High School, and I've really enjoyed getting to work with middle school students. I'm very thankful for the team that Mr. Lawrence and I have, and I can't stress enough that you guys are just as much a part of the team as we are. So we're going to talk a lot about ways that you can help your student, and one of those ways we'll talk a little bit later is your communication with us. We have an incredible school community, and our door and our phone line and our email extensions are always available to you, and we try very hard to respond to you quickly. So please know that we really feel like you're part of our team as well. Next, we'll talk about this crew. We have a phenomenal group of 5th grade teachers, and as you know, or many of you probably know, we are expanding rapidly here at Greenville Middle School, and that means so is our 5th grade team, because our 5th grade class is quite large compared to what we have now. So we have added some members to this team. So some of these faces, if you've had students pass through the halls of GMS before, maybe you don't know. And some of them you do, but we have an exceptional group of teachers ready to welcome your students. So we have Miss York, Mrs. Cluck, Mrs. Ullman, Mrs. Ramich is actually now Mrs. Bednar, Mrs. Bushmaker, Mrs. Murphy. We are adding a new staff member, Mr. Wickman, who is excited to join us, and another new staff member, Mrs. I'm going to butcher this name, Chris. Can you help me, Mr. Lawrence? I think it's
Christowiak.
Yeah, you got that one. I'm still learning that one. I'll get it. I'm going to call her Miss K. And then Mrs. Sorensen is actually coming over to us from the Hortonville side of the district. So she's not necessarily new to the district, but she's going to be new to us here at GMS. So we have a big crew of 5th graders coming in, and this team, along with us, are very excited to welcome them. In addition to our 5th grade core staff, we have our exploratory teachers. So Mrs. Suda teaches our Dig Lit classes, and so that means exploring what it means to be a digital citizen and building some of those keyboarding and computer skills. Miss Hurley is our art teacher, and again, we've expanded, so that means we have added another art teacher. So new to us in the coming year is Miss Seaver. She'll be joining us, and she'll be working with our 5th grade students. Mr. Brown teaches Phi-Ed. Mrs. Kernan teaches Spanish. We are in the process of hiring another Phi-Ed teacher, so we have a blank space there, and we're just about ready to wrap up that hiring process, so we'll be excited to share that soon. We have a new choir teacher as well. Miss Francis will be joining us. And then our phenomenal band team of Mr. Leja, Miss Lambertson, and Mrs. Patch. So they look forward to working with your students as well throughout the years as our 5th graders get to navigate those exploratory classes as well. So I'm going to turn it back over to Mr. Lawrence, and he's going to continue sharing with you about some of the great opportunities we have for our students here.
Thank you, Mrs. Powell. So we know that transition to middle school is very exciting. It can be very nervous as well. And so we want to express the fact that it is very normal for your child to be nervous about starting middle school. And quite honestly, it's perfectly normal for you to be nervous about your child's transition to middle school. I am telling you from my perspective that it is going to be okay for you as the parent. And also your child is going to do very well also. If it's your first child going to middle school, it can be a very nerving experience. And so just know that we have a fantastic staff here that's here to care for you and to surround your child with love and care and provide them the opportunities to be as successful as possible as they navigate their middle school years here. And so there's just a little quote there from 2004 that says that transition to middle school may be one of the toughest transitions during childhood, both for parents and kids. And we kind of recognize that because kids in middle school are trying to really navigate to figure out who they are as a person, where they belong, what their interests are. And then on top of that, of course, we've got all the physical changes that students are going through at that time as well. So going back to that jigsaw puzzle that I talked about at the beginning, we are here to sort of form that foundation or that frame, that structure for your child as they go through those middle school years. Getting involved with middle school, there's some really neat things that we have available for our 5th graders as they enter. And of course, as they go into 6th grade, 7th grade, and 8th grade, it becomes even better in the sense that they can have even more experiences. Just some of the things that we have offered for our 5th graders who are getting involved in middle school. We've got chess club, Lego League, book club, nature club, forensic. We have dancing, a dance team and cheerleading that has started up. Coding club, we have show choir, jazz band, and soccer is a new addition for next year. There was a survey done and we had a lot of interest in starting soccer, so soccer will be available for 5th graders next year as well. So a lot of great opportunities for our 5th graders to get involved in middle school. I'm now going to turn it back over to Mrs. Powell around some procedural wonderings about middle school.
All right, so we have a lot of students and parents wondering about some of these things, and some of the things that our students tend to wonder about are things that we worked through with them when our 4th grade students came over. We talked about a lot of these things, and there's opportunities in the transition class to talk about these as well. But some of the things students wonder about is getting lost or finding their classes. We get a lot of questions about finding and opening the locker, bathrooms, not knowing the school rules and expectations. They often will ask about carrying their books. What does it look like moving from class to class without being late? How to know what materials to have with them at the right time, and then also eating in the larger cafeteria. So there's some really great supports that we have in place in those beginning days. You're going to see your student coming home feeling a lot of relief after the first day when they know how much adult support is in the building, not just on the first day or the first week, but as we move forward. But in the first coming days, we're going to see a lot of extra hands on deck in that 5th grade wing supporting students as they come in. You'll see Mr. Lawrence and I in there helping as well, helping students get where they need to be. Our teachers will be ready to assist them when they're coming into the building in the halls, and we'll work through in their homeroom class with a lot of these items. For example, their teachers are going to support them with where's their locker, how do they navigate the lock, and that's not something we're expecting them to be able to do on day one. We'll work with students on that. School-wide expectations will be covered as well, and all of those foundational skills for expectations carry over from their elementary school experience, and then we'll layer on some of those expectations that are here specific to the middle school. Students don't necessarily really need to carry around a lot with them during the day because a big part of their day is spent in their homeroom class. At the end of the day, they'll move to their exploratory classes just for those last 7th and 8th hours. So there's not a lot of things that they have to carry, and we do have students, able to use their backpack, and a lot of times they're just carrying their backpack just at that end of the day. In terms of being late, they're really moving from a very short distance. And there's lots of students who wonder about that. And then once they experience where the 5th grade hallway is to where they have to go for exploratories, they have a sense of calm pretty quickly about that. Teachers are going to help with bringing the right materials at the right time, and that orientation process to what that looks like. That's a big part of the training in the beginning days of school. So we'll assist with that. And then the lunchroom looks different from what they're used to. But on that first day, Mr. Lawrence and I, as well as our 5th grade teachers and our lunch supervisor staff, we're going to be out there supporting and helping. But earlier in the day, in the morning, we'll actually go through with the 5th grade students, what are the expectations for lunch? What does that seating chart look like? How does it work? And all of those things. So when they come in for their first lunch experience, it's already pretty fluid, and students do a great job navigating it because we'll spend some explicit time teaching them how the lunch process works. So those are some of the things that we'll do, and a lot of the procedural questions that we get from students. We talked about a lot of those things when they were here. And then there's some things that you can do as a parent to help with some of those procedural wonderings. So practicing their lock combination before school is very helpful. Having your child spend time trying to practice that lock is definitely going to make a difference. If they don't get it by the time we get here for day one, it's nothing to panic about. We'll assist with that, and we won't necessarily expect them ready to go with it on that first day. Getting to know their schedule is important, and that will be available to you mid-August. Take some time to go through that with them, know what the day looks like. We're not 100% certain what open house looks like for this year, but we're moving in the right direction. So at open house, that's a great time to move through what that schedule looks like. And just to reiterate again, most of the day they're in their 5th grade homeroom class. And there's really just that end of the day, 7th, 8th hour when they transition to exploratory classes. So the great thing about the middle school transition is they're getting into the building, so they'll have that familiarity with the building, but we're not having them move all around the building like we will with some of our upper level grades. They're pretty much kind of centered around that 5th grade hallway. The exploratory classes are right off of that, as well as the cafeteria. So the movement around the building will be pretty limited. Take time to talk with them about the behavior matrix and expectations at GMS. We'll share them, prior to school. One thing that's really helpful is to talk about some different scenarios and kind of role play. What might that look like? So talk about things that may happen at lunch, out on the playground for recess, different things that might happen in the classroom. We really try to work hard with students on problem solving, and that's the lens that we come from. So when you're in a situation, how can we problem solve that and work to build those problem solving skills? And one of the most important skill that you can help them with in terms of behavior matrix and how we work with students is advocating with them to really help them build their communication skills, because that's going to be a big part of that problem solving piece. Another important piece is talking with your child about the importance of organization. This is their first year having a locker and using it in a different way to organize their materials. They will have a lot of their materials with them in the classroom, but for some students, organization can be challenging. So figure out with your student what you feel like is going to work for them. You know your child best, and help kind of come up with a plan as to how you can help them stay organized. Regular checks of the backpack and regular communication about what does your locker look like? How many sweatshirts do you have in there? And extra, bottles of Gatorade, all of those things help to keep that locker free from a lot of extra things to make things easier for your student. So those are some of the things that you can do prior to their start, just to help with the transition piece as well. And from there, I'm going to transition it back to Mr. Lawrence.
Thank you, Mrs. Powell. The next little aspect that we'd like to discuss is academic wonderings. How does that change or shift from 4th grade elementary to 5th grade and 6th, 7th, and 8th grade? So kids start to wonder about, how do I get good grades, and competition for grades, having more than one teacher, and how does that work with grades? Do I get more homework, or do I have more long-term projects that I have to work on? How do I handle the fact that there's going to be more challenging and work requires more effort? The expectations from teachers may be different in different subject areas. Basic tasks such as studying, taking notes, and some of those other academic behaviors, how do I navigate those in middle school? And these are all really common things for students to wonder about. And the big thing is, as parents, that the Mastery Connect and the standards-based grading that we utilize, students are aware. Teachers do a fantastic job of sharing the standard that they're working on. They have a learning target posted every day for every substandard that leads to the larger parent standard. So they're talking with students continuously about what the standards are and what they need to meet mastery on those standards. So students know exactly where they are in regards to their academic standing and preparing to meet mastery for those standards. Competition for grades isn't something that really needs to be worried about. I would say if it's a competition, it's really coming to school and doing the very best that you can, being the best version of yourself that you can. And so encouraging students to have a growth mindset, to understand that they're going to make mistakes, and that is celebrated in 5th grade. We encourage students to make mistakes because that's when learning happens. And so really competition with yourself about being the best version of you and doing the very best that you can. Having more than one teacher. So as Mrs. Powell alluded to before, students will primarily be self-contained. They will be switching for science and social studies. A couple of students or a few students will be doing that. So they may have a teacher for science and social studies, but it's really all of the teachers in the 5th grade team really work well together and have sort of universal expectations. They have similar expectations in their classrooms. They have fantastic community building, and so the expectations really are quite similar in the different classrooms. So having a different teacher from an academic perspective won't be that big of a deal in 5th grade. And just like they do in 4th grade now, they'll have a different teacher for Phi-Ed and for art and Spanish and all the other exploratory classes. And so it's just certainly taking time to getting to understand the teacher. A lot of our teachers do a really nice job of including the kids in the process of designing expectations for their class because they want it to be a class community. And so they involve the students in that process. More homework, and this is really interesting because first of all, we were excited to have our 4th graders come over and visit us in person this year, and that was really a great opportunity for us to meet the students and have them meet their teachers and see the building physically and in person. And one of the questions that got brought up a lot was, will we have more homework, Mr. Lawrence, because we're in middle school? And the answer to that, quite honestly, is if your child uses the time that they have available to them in class, they really won't have a whole lot of homework. The teachers structure the learning environment in a way that they'll do a mini lesson, they'll do some guided instruction, and then they sort of a gradual release, they'll provide students time to work. And during that time, the teacher, who's the expert in the content area, is there and available to help the student. If they use that time, they won't have homework. There are some things that we ask kids to practice that are very foundational, such as reading. We want kids to read every night, and the teachers will express that. And we also want them to work on their basic multiplication facts. That's something that's really important and foundational for future mathematics classes. Other than that, though, if they're using their time in class, there won't be a whole lot of homework. One of the things we recognize is that we're talking about 10-year-olds, 9 and 10-year-olds, and they're still kids. We want them to be outside, having fun, engaging with their peers. Quite honestly, something that they've missed for the past year, and we want them to be kids and being out there and playing. And so they have a full-time job while they're here at school to do the best they can to be a learner. At home, we want them to be a kid and to have fun. Not to say we don't want them to have fun and be a kid here, but we want them getting outside and playing and interacting with their friends in a less structured social environment outside while they're at home. So we're not going to be piling on the homework. There may be some long-term projects, and that really lends itself to some of the academic skill of planning and preparing oneself for, how do I chunk out different pieces of this project so that I get to the end goal. But teachers really do a nice job of helping students navigate that. The work being more challenging and requiring more effort, certainly as students engage from 4th grade to 5th grade and beyond, the work does become a little more rigorous. But if students are preparing themselves along the way and doing the best they can, they will do just fine. And the big thing is having that growth mindset and having students understand that as work becomes more difficult, that's okay. And if your brain hurts a little bit from trying, that's okay. And if you make mistakes, that's okay too, because it's part of the growing process. And so we really want students to focus on the process of learning and understanding that it's going to take time and that mistakes will be made, but we will get there. Basic tasks such as studying, taking notes, and taking tests. These are academic behaviors, and those are things that we will really work to teach our students over the course of the year. They are really lifelong skills that will take them far beyond 5th grade and even beyond high school and in college and into life. As you know, as adults, taking notes, having lists, finding ways to organize ourselves are life skills that we utilize every day in our daily lives. And so we will work with students to help identify what skill set is important that they need work on and how to find the strategy that works best for them in that environment. What can we do as parents in terms of the academic piece? The biggest thing I think is be the example and show the importance of education. Let them know you care. When they come home, ask your child about their day. Ask them to be specific. What is one thing that you learned today that you didn't know yesterday? Or tell me about your favorite part of math class today. Or what was your biggest struggle that you learned something from? When you set aside time to have that conversation with your child and you let them know that you're vested in the process just like them, that really shows to them the importance of education. If they do have homework or they're needing that time to do reading or working on their multiplication tables, we want to be able to set aside a quiet space and time for your child to study and complete that work. That's free of distractions, so they have that dedicated space to really focus on what they need to do. And this thing I alluded to before, balancing schoolwork and playtime. We do not want your 5th grade child spending hours at home on homework. You have to be able to say, you know what, enough for tonight, go out and play. If there is ever a time where your child is spending 2 hours a night on homework, please call us. We need to figure that out together as a team. That should not be the case, and we don't want that happening. We want your child to be a child also and to enjoy their time after school in doing extracurriculars and things that they enjoy as well. Again, encourage reading. Our teachers are going to be doing this every day. There's a lot of research out there on just reading for enjoyment. We don't care if it's a magazine, if it's a graphic novel. We want kids picking up books and reading. And the more you can do that and encourage that with your child or read with your child, the better educational experience they have. And then assist your child with their homework or check their homework daily. If they do have stuff that they bring home, invest yourself in that process. Ask to see it. Ask them to explain it to you. If they can explain it to you, that helps their learning and solidifies the learning that they've done as well. And so ask them about their homework. Ask to see it if they have it, and really engage in a discussion around it. And then set high but reachable expectations for your child. At the end of the day, we want your child to be successful, and we want them to strive for excellence and be the best version of themselves that they can be. So we want to have high expectations, and we want to have those expectations also be reachable at the same time with the growth mindset in mind. And then lastly is encouragement. We know that in working with middle school students that there are going to be struggles from day to day. We know that kids are going to make mistakes. I make mistakes every single day, but we learn from them and we grow from them. And so encouraging our students, you may have had a bad day today, but tomorrow's a brand new day. We have a fresh start, and it's going to be another opportunity for you to learn. And so really encouraging them to do the best they can every single day really goes a long way in helping with your child's experience in middle school. I'm going to turn it back over to Ms. Powell, and she's going to talk about some of our SEL components.
All right, so when we reference SEL, or we're talking about social emotional learning, those are some skills that we truly believe are as equally important as academic skills, because if students are struggling socially or emotionally, that's going to get in the way of some of those academic skills. So one of the things that I think we do a great job of, and we get better every single day, is helping students build social emotional skills. So those are skills that students are going to navigate in different ways. And just like we build academic skills, we need to build these skills. So these are things that we're going to help our students learn and navigate throughout 5th grade. And these things will continue on into 6th, 7th, 8th grade. But in 5th grade, we're going to help them navigate different skills specific to social emotional learning. So some of the things that they worry about are bullies, or being bullied, or being teased. Oftentimes they're worried about making new friends or finding connections to a peer group. Sometimes it's inadequacies compared to other students. So like they'll say feeling stupid compared to other students. Very much a focus on success in sports and popularity sometimes comes with that in their mindsets. Being embarrassed in front of other kids, and they're navigating puberty, which is a difficult time. We often hear 5th graders talking about having boyfriends or girlfriends and who they're going to sit with at lunch. And occasionally 5th graders are exposed to concepts of worry related to being pressured to smoke or vape, drinking alcohol, or taking drugs. So we work to help make sure students feel supported in these things. And those are areas that we'd ask you to support as well. One of the things that we always stress to the students is if we don't know, we can't help. So I circle back to what I shared earlier about problem solving and communication. So open conversations with your students about how they're feeling and encouraging them to connect with a trusted adult is really important. Once they know, they make that communication once, it becomes easier every single time, and it gets easier with every opportunity to communicate with us, with their teacher, with other trusted adults. And that might look like lunch supervisors or exploratory teachers or parapros in the classroom, lots of different people, but they'll help with some of these concerns as well. If your student is having concerns and they're having a tough time communicating them with us, we cannot stress enough. I circle back to if we don't know, we can't help. So please reach out to us, because many of these things are really real concerns for students. But when we start to work with students on them, we can help them with problem sizing, meaning is this a big problem or a small problem, and how can we advocate for ourselves in communicating what we're worried about and how we can work through it. So keep in mind, there's explicit social emotional learning that happens in the classroom, and it's just a part of our everyday operation here at school. So we're going to help them build skills around self-management, social awareness, responsible decision-making, all of those things that play a part in helping them with some of these social and emotional worries and wonderings that they might have, which of course are age appropriate. So when we look at this list, these would certainly be things that age appropriately that our middle school students start worrying about. So normalizing conversations around these things with your students and keeping an open line of communication is really important. So what can you do? And I kind of shared about that, but be aware of adolescent development and what is age appropriate, and we'll help share that information. But being upbeat and positive and optimistic about what lies ahead, that's really important in helping them navigate these situations. Recognizing their fears and validating their fears is very important, and doing that in a way that offers support. I'm here for you, let's work on this together. And sometimes that means, in these difficult situations, means holding your child accountable, right? So there's always two sides to every story, and what does your specific student's role play in the situation is a good part of the conversation. And having tough conversations sometimes is important, and we're open to those tough conversations as well. So please include us on them when we can assist. It's really an important time in 5th grade to start giving your child the opportunity to make more decisions. Some of those decisions that they're going to make might seem small decisions to them, but those build up to bigger decisions and help them increase that responsibility. And responsible decision making is a huge part of the social emotional lessons that we build into our daily routine here at school. One thing that we often work with students on is that idea of picking your battles, and that comes back to that problem solving as well. Not that we're going to ignore things, but we're going to help them understand, is this a problem that I need to tackle, or can I walk away from this situation and move forward? And that helps them understand how to navigate situations as well, right? And then giving them the tools that they need to succeed. And that is, when you display a growth mindset, that's going to transfer over to your student. So problem solving skills, communication skills are two of the most important skills that they need. And normalizing that things can be hard and that you can do hard things. We always say to kids, we always say to the students, I'd never ask you to do something that I didn't think that you could do. So building them up with the tools that they need to be successful are really important. And with that means sometimes they make mistakes. And so when we're working with students in situations, we always normalize that, right? Nobody expects you to come to middle school having every single one of those social emotional skills, and we learn from them. And every opportunity is a coachable conversation that we can have with students. So please keep in mind that if your student comes home, and we do a great job of communicating our conversations with students, but if a student comes home and says, I was talking to Mrs. Powell or Mr. Lawrence today in their office, please don't automatically assume it's a bad thing. Oftentimes we help with coaching those social emotional skills, and we help students all the time with those conversations around problem solving, problem sizing, and how to navigate social emotional skills. And we do it in our own conversations. We always tell kids we make mistakes too, and how do we move forward? So allowing them the freedom to make mistakes and focusing on how do we learn from this, and it's always a new day, right? Tomorrow's a new day. So these are some of the things that you can do to help support the work that we're doing with your students here. And our classroom teachers are so good at this. These are often things that don't even get to Mr. Lawrence and I because they do so much of this work with your students. But no, we support these things as well. And same things, if something's happening at school and your student is having a tough time communicating with us, please reach out to us because we want those open lines of communication to assist. With that, I'm going to turn it back over to Mr. Lawrence.
Thank you, Mrs. Powell. One of the important things that we like to talk about also is how you can get involved at school and really the impact that that can have for your child and for our school community. The first thing is certainly to maintain a good working relationship with your child's teachers. And again, I want to go back to that puzzle analogy before. Between yourselves as parents and us as the staff members that are working with your child every single day, we form that border, that frame, that structure for your child. And so maintaining that good working relationship is really imperative. And so don't hesitate to reach out, whether it's voicemail, whether it's an email or a text message. Reach out to us and let us know that you have concerns or that you have an idea. Any communication is good communication. So make sure that you're working with our staff and that they're we make sure that they're working with you as well to maintain that positive relationship. Something we haven't been able to do this past year is visit the school, and as we learn more about next year and what that looks like, we are hopeful that we can have opportunities for you to visit the school next year. More will be coming on that, but when that opportunity arises, visit the school. If you look at the bottom bullet, we have a Polar Parents program. We allow parents to come in and visit, volunteer for a day. They get to spend time in their child's classroom, perhaps spend time in other people's classrooms to get to see what teachers do every day, to get to experience what the students experience. So we really encourage that. And so as that becomes available again, as we move into the future, we encourage you to participate in that. Know and understand the polar bear expectations, and really those are around the social emotional learning components that Mrs. Powell just referenced. Having that social awareness, making responsible decisions, building those relationship skills that students have. Those are all embedded and woven into our polar bear expectations, as well as woven into the curricular things that we teach each and every day. And so as you know those and understand those, you can help communicate those and help support the work that we're doing here at school. It's really important also to attend conferences and to be involved in attending your child's activities. Get involved with the PTO organization. Those are all fantastic ways to show your child and to let them know that education is important and you are doing your part in becoming a part of that community. And so any opportunity that you can have to participate in that process, we really would love to have you and encourage that. And then attendance is really, really, really important. Making sure your child attends school each day. With the struggles that we've had this year, it's been difficult at times, and we understand that. But having regular attendance really leads to success. And when attendance is sparse or there's gaps in attendance, there's critical things that your child is missing that really builds on itself, whether it's teaching of mathematics or whether it's social emotional learning and everything in between. Those concepts build on one another, and when your child misses their education, it makes it really, really difficult, and it sets them back, and it makes it really challenging for them to get caught up. So really make sure that attendance is a priority for your child every single day at school. And we know that there's a ton of research behind the positive things that can happen when parents get involved with school. There's decades of research. There's higher grades, higher test scores, and higher graduation rates, better school attendance. We have increased motivation. When parents show their students that education is important to them, their children become more motivated to attend school and want to do better. They have better self-image and better self-esteem. We have lower rates of suspension, decreased use of drugs and alcohol, fewer instances of violent behavior, greater enrollment rates in post-secondary education, whether that's a 2-year degree, whether that's a trade school, whatever it is, we see increases in that. So there's a ton of research that backs the fact that having parents involved in their child's education leads to positive things as they navigate middle school and high school. So we really, really, really encourage you to get involved as much as you can. We will keep you posted as a community related to our mitigation strategies and what that means for parent involvement coming into the schools. And as soon as that process becomes available, we will let you know, because we really, really encourage you to be a part of our process and a part of your child's schooling experience. I'm going to pass it back over to Mrs. Powell, who's going to talk a little bit about the transition class and a couple of other logistical things before we wrap up with question and answer.
All right, so we have a really great opportunity for our middle school students to participate in a transition class this summer. If your child is already enrolled, that's excellent. If your child is not, don't panic. There's still time to get them in that class. And I want to just stress this is not mandatory. They do not have to attend, but it is really helpful. If you have not registered your student for this and you want your student to take part in this, please give our school office a call and they can assist with this. But the transition class is really going to build on and expand on the work that we did with your student when they came last week for their tour. So we are going to have opportunities for your students to dig in a little deeper on some of those things that we covered. So an example might be working on or time spent practicing that lock. That's something that they'll work on during that transition class. A little bit more in depth in terms of the tour and getting more familiar with the building. Some of those procedures that we didn't get to dive as deep in will happen there. So more information about the health room might be covered there, and different logistics. But I also think it's really helpful because that transition class has some key staff members that are leading it. So Mr. Lawrence and I will be here and we'll get to see the students during the class. We don't necessarily teach it, but we do have staff members here that do teach it that I think are really important for students to get to know. So for example, Mrs. Danke, our school counselor, she's one of the people that are here and leading that class. And it's a great opportunity for your student to build a connection with her and get to know her. So during that class, it's more hands-on than that tour, some more opportunities for discussion, and we often get to dive a little bit deeper into some of those worries and concerns that students have on a more individual basis with students. Again, absolutely not required, but it is helpful. And if you need to register for that, please give our school office a call and we can assist with that with open spots. Next, we have often a lot of worries about that class list and what I need to bring. And so here's that list here for 5th grade. We don't expect you to memorize this, but this is going to be posted on our school website. And we also send newsletters over the summer, so you'll be able to see this list there. There's a couple of things on here we would ask. We do ask students not to bring K-sits, and as teachers work on, so those are like those big Trapper Keeper binders that they carry. The teachers are going to work on different organizational skills with students, and sometimes those K-sits just become a challenge, and we're going to help them build some other skills related to that. Anything that you feel like they might need to organize their locker, that's kind of up to you. But this list here shows the essential things that they do need to bring. If your student takes the bus, please don't panic and think I have to send all of these things the first day. Start by sending the things that you feel might be most essential. If we do have open house, which our fingers are crossed, those would be items you could bring in. But if you do need to slowly stagger some of these items in for your student, that's okay in the first couple days. So please don't panic about this list. And our teachers also do a really great job communicating, so they'll send out information as well prior to school. But we'll find this in our monthly summer newsletters, also on our school website. Then we're going to turn it over to you for questions. And I do want to just advocate, oftentimes we'll see questions posted on social media, and sometimes parents have the answers and are able to assist. But sometimes the responses to those questions kind of lead people astray. So one of the things Mr. Lawrence and I always say is if you have a question, please call the school office. We have office staff who, they know the ins and outs of every single working of the building, and they can answer every single question for you. If they can't answer it, they know who to get the answer from. So totally get the use of social media to answer questions, but please know if you do have a question, the best place to get it answered is calling the school office. So with that, we're going to monitor the chat here and see if we get any questions. If we can answer them, we certainly will. If it's something we need to get back to you on, we certainly will. If it's an individual question specific to your own student, we'd ask you to reach out to us via email or phone specifically. But if you feel like you have a question for the whole group, then we would encourage you to put that in the chat now. So Mr. Lawrence and I will wait to see what pops in there, and we will answer them as they appear.
And Mrs. Powell, I do see a question here. The question is the Polar Parent Program similar to the Watchdog program at GES? And the short answer to that question is yes. The only difference between the Watchdogs program and the Polar Parent program is that the Polar Parent program allows positive male and female role models or mother and father figures to come into the building. The Watchdog specifically is dads of great students is the program name. We certainly know the research behind having a positive male influence. There's positive influence from our mothers too, and so we just encourage any positive adult figure to join our program. And so we call it Polar Parents. but very similar in its premise. So great question. There was a question here about the transition class being full. I will make sure Mrs. Powell and I look into that. If we need to look at the possibility of opening up another section or something, we want to make sure that this process is available for our students that are interested. So we will definitely look into that. Mrs. Powell, we make sure we jot some notes down on that, and we will get an answer to you regarding that.
Yep, I'll definitely jot that down. And sometimes we do have cancellations in that class. Oftentimes, family vacations pop up and things, and people will call and cancel. So there may be additional spots that pop up as well. And so we will certainly try to work with you on that, because if we can make that ease minds for students, we want to do that. But please also know that if you're on vacation and you're not able to make it that week, I cannot stress enough how great the 5th grade team does in terms of orienting your student when we come back. So no student will feel like they missed everything or they're starting behind if they don't attend that.
We have another question here, Mrs. Powell. When will we be informed of the process for pickup and drop off? And then sort of a related question is the school day 7:45 to 2:45? And those are great questions. The answer to that is yes. We are starting next year a little early. And that's due to the dual bus runs that need to be run with the high school. So our school day is going to run from 7:45 until 2:45. All of our students will be dismissed next year at 2:45, so we will not have a staggered release. All students will exit at the same time. One of the things that is nice about next year, as you know, we passed the referendum. And so the whole outside of our parking lot structure and the bus loading area is going to be shifted and changed. The bus loading area will be out in the back of the building now on the east side of the building. And our parking lot area will be expanded and our drop-off area will be expanded. So vehicular traffic and bus traffic will not merge together, so to speak. But all of our students will be dismissed at the same time, just exiting through 2 different areas. Great question.
Yep. We'll send out more information about the pickup and the drop-off process. And for safety reasons, it's very important that we follow those expectations. We often know that parents kind of want to stop in the most convenient spot for them to let their student out. But we do need you to pull all the way up into the front of the building and have your student exit the vehicle and walk to their entrance door so that we can keep traffic moving. You'll see lots of updates from us on that, but that's a critical safety factor in our process. So watch for that in that summer newsletter as well.
I have another question here related. When does construction start? And that's a great question. Right now, our tentative schedule is to have the late July, early August begin the process of, which would be after summer school because we're hosting summer school on the GES and GMS campus this year. Have the parking lot area and the bus lot area all done and completed before the school year starts, with construction on the grade level wings. So on the south side, the 5th and 6th grade, and then on the north side, 7th and 8th grade wings starting construction sometime in September. And then the 3rd phase, once that is complete, would be to begin construction on the exploratory area, which would be the additional world language rooms, our band rooms, the additional gym space, and any other remodeling types of areas within the building, including the expansion of our cafeteria. All to be completed by the beginning of the 22-23 school year, which would be when your children would be 6th graders. A question on here, Mrs. Powell. When do we find out who our child's teacher will be, and will they have the opportunity to meet their teacher during summer transition class?
So we're working on class lists now, and that's a kind of a tedious process when we try to match everything up as it needs to be according to all different factors. So that takes some time, and we'll be working on those lists throughout the summer. We'll be updating you exactly when those lists will be available. Unfortunately, sometimes things come up and things have to change with that a little bit. So we will communicate when those class lists will be available to you. There is generally a goal to have those to you. Mr. Lawrence helped me with the exact date in August.
I don't know the exact date.
Right.
It's going to be shortly after the transition class.
Right. I was just going to say it's typically mid-August, and that really typically falls sometimes right after that transition class. The middle school 5th grade teachers aren't necessarily always there during that time, so they don't necessarily teach the transition class. But we do know that in August, just like all of our teachers, they're working their tails off and they're here a lot in the building. Some of them are part of the class, some are not, but many of them are here. So if the opportunity to meet the teacher presents itself during that class, you know, the teachers will certainly be looking forward to meeting your students, but typically that would happen at the open house. We really are hesitant to share class lists too early because things change. And so we want to make sure that we're giving accurate information. And so we will give you that date, but I would plan on after August 15th, typically.
Thank you, Mrs. Powell. We have another question. It says, how do we get the newsletter added, or the newsletter, is it added automatically? So what happens once the school year is over and we roll over into the next year, which begins at the end of June. So June 30 is the end of our fiscal year for the school calendar. Early July, we roll over. And so all of our 4th grade students become part of the GMS 5th grade enrollment, and then all of our 8th grade become part of the high school, et cetera. That at that point in time, you will be in Skyward as a 5th grade parent and as a 5th grade student. And so you would automatically then get any communications that we would send out through Skylert or through Skyward. And so, yes, it would become an automatic addition once the system rolls over. Good question.
Yep.
Just to repeat on what time the school start and end, 7:45 is the beginning of the school day. The end of the school day is 2:45. All of our students will be dismissed at 2:45 at the same time, so no staggered release next year. Mm-hmm. Good question.
Yeah.
We'll just hang out here for another minute or so if there's any other questions. Again, we do want to thank you for joining us this evening. We know that it's it's kind of rainy, but it's still a nice spring night, and you know it's difficult to stay indoors sometimes. So we really appreciate you joining us this evening, and we are super excited about meeting your child and getting to know your child in 5th grade and as they progress through middle school. Really excited about the team that we have, the team of 5th grade teachers, our exploratory staff. Just a really fantastic community to be a part of. We appreciate your support as parents. We could not do the things that we do without your support, and so we really are tremendously thankful for that. And it's a great place to be. So we're really excited and thankful for you to share your children with us as they begin the transition to navigating middle school. Oh. There is a question, Ms. Powell, you could answer this probably. What does the lunch program look like, and do 5th graders mix with other grades for lunch?
I sure can. So the lunch program that you're going to see here at GMS is really the same lunch program that you would see at Greenville Elementary or North Greenville Elementary. The same process is in place and procedures are in place. So students will have the same a la carte options, and we do post a lunch menu online. It typically it's not exactly the same as the elementary menu, but it's usually pretty similar. So the food choices will be very similar. 5th graders will only be eating with 5th graders. So we do not mix grade levels, and really that's all the way throughout middle school. So 6th, 7th, and 8th, same thing. There's not a lot of times when grade levels mix, and the beauty of this building is the way it's designed. So our 5th and 6th grade, our 5th graders are downstairs on the first level. Our 6th graders are above them on one side of the building, and on the other side of the building, our 7th graders are on the first level. Our 8th graders are upstairs. And so there's really not a lot of crossover. At times, the students may pass other grade levels when they're headed to their exploratories, but those times are all different throughout the day for each grade level, so it's pretty rare. But lunch they will eat with their 5th grade peers, and they won't be mixed. We do offer breakfast in the morning as well. It is really important because we cannot stress enough that being here and on time and ready to go in your classroom when the school day starts is important. So if your student is planning to eat breakfast here in the morning, we would ask you in your drop-off time to really plan for that. So if you're dropping your student off, 3 or 4 minutes before they're supposed to be in their class, Oftentimes they're getting breakfast then, and then they're late for those first directions from the teacher. So do plan for that in the morning. If your student takes the bus, there is plenty of time for them to get off the bus, go directly to the cafeteria, get their breakfast, and head to their classroom. But, you know, stress with them, it's not necessarily a socialized time and then go down and get your breakfast, because that's when they might be late. So yes, very, very, very similar to what they experience in middle school. It looks like the next question relates to technology. Mr. Lawrence, I can take that if you want.
Sure.
What are the recommendations for technology, tablet, laptop, and phone? So we're not going to necessarily tell you a specific device that your student should bring. We do have a bring your own device policy, but I want to be very clear about that. We really feel very strongly that students develop age-appropriate digital literacy and digital citizenship skills, and fifth graders sometimes struggle with that. They're still building those skills. So all the way throughout middle school, students have access to their phones or devices only when they have teacher permission. So phones can't be out in the lunchroom, out at recess, they can't be in bathrooms. They really should be stored in a locker or backpack unless the teacher specifically says they can get it out for academic use. So there really should not be any communication with peers on social media. There shouldn't really be messaging with anybody during the day. That's not academic use. If you need to get a hold of your student during the day, we would ask you to send them or call our school office, and we can get them those messages. And if your student needs to get a hold of you, same thing, they can come down to the office to do that as well. But we definitely try to help them build age-appropriate skills for digital citizenship. Tablets or laptops work best. Phones really don't work for academic use. So in theory, it seems like a good idea that they're going to pull up Canvas on their phone or use their phone for academic purposes, but phones really don't work for that. So we would ask you not to send a phone as the academic device. That would be a tablet would be better. But I also want to stress that we have awesome technology here. So a laptop or a tablet is best, but we have devices here that your student can use, and most of our, well, all of our classes have what we would call a mini lab, and there is a computer lab right in the fifth grade hallway. So if your student comes home and says, I need a phone for school, I have to have a phone for school, or I have to have a tablet, I have to have a laptop, not true. They don't have to have it. It's nice and it's helpful, but please know that we do have technology to support your student as well. If they're going to bring a laptop or a tablet, that should be stored safely in their locker, which is locked, again, without permission from a teacher. It shouldn't be out. And that also goes with phones on the bus, tablets and phones on the bus. They should not be using devices or social media, on the bus as well.
One of the things, Mrs. Powell, I'd like to add to that is if you are considering sending a laptop, in our next newsletter, we can send out sort of the model specific information that we use with our students here, so that they're using a similar device. And those devices, I think, are running in the right around the $300, $350 range.
Yep.
So we can send out the specs for that, so you see what we're using with the students here.
Mm-hmm. But keep it simple, and definitely, a protective case is really important. And we always stress, your student best. You know their responsibility level with a device. So, think about that in the process of whether or not you feel like it's appropriate to send them with a device.
The next two questions. Ordering school supplies from the school toolbox website, as we did in elementary school. That is something that I know the PTOs have set up. We don't have that available for this coming year, but certainly something we can look at for future years. So it's, I guess, right now for this year, the good old-fashioned trip to Walmart or wherever it may be to get school supplies. But I would love, I know we've done it in the past, and would love to get back to that process again in the future. And then another great question, what is the earliest they can be dropped off in the morning? Not 5:30, please. That's a joke. But one of the cool things that we were able to offer in the past, and we will get more information out on this, is we used to offer an open gym prior to the pandemic, and that was really a really awesome opportunity for our students to come into school. They would go into the gym and play volleyball, would play basketball, would hang out in the cafeteria with their friends. It gave them a chance to get their blood pumping before school started and just get their whole body moving. We will see what happens with that this fall, and more information will come out in our newsletters. We're certainly going to ask for that. I don't know if that's going to be a possibility or not, but we'll ask. And if it is, then we would probably start something like that at about 7:15 in the morning, maybe as early as 7 o'clock. So keep your eyes out for the newsletters as they come through this summer related to that. If we don't have open gym, I would say 7:15 would probably be about the earliest we would ask students to be dropped off at school. Teachers and staff members won't typically get here before that. Mrs. Powell and I will, but we just want to make sure that there's supervision available for your children here at school.
Right. If you're not doing open gym, 7:30 is ideal. It's just enough time to come get some breakfast if they are getting breakfast and get to their classrooms. We really stress that it's definitely not a time to be in unsupervised areas like hanging out in the halls. It would be, heading to lockers and heading to their classes. And so recognizing that drop-off times in the morning and traffic can be difficult, I do think it's going to be a little bit better. I think a lot better this coming year with addition of a longer drop-off area. But don't forget to keep in mind if they're going to get breakfast and allowing time for that so they can be in time for class.
All right. It does not appear that we have any other questions, Mrs. Powell. Again, we want to thank everybody for joining us this evening. If you do have questions that come up after this, certainly do not hesitate to reach out to the school. Send us an email, send us a voicemail, and we would be happy to get back to you with answers on those questions. We are, again, excited to meet all of your children, to work with you, and excited to have them part of the Greenville Middle School experience. And so with that, as Truman would say, good morning, good evening, and good night. Have a great evening, everyone. Thank you.
Bye, everyone.